I don't know where to start. Why don't we just start with the October sales down 28-30%? Surprise, not surprise? What do you make of it?
It's from a low base, and we thought, the base was low base and the numbers should narrow a bit. But for the major developers we track, they're on average down 40% year over year. And we see that the recovery is confined to the state-owned developers, where there's private developers, they're still really struggling. And going into 2023, we see risks from both the supply side and the demand side. On the demand side, 70% of Chinese home buyers surveyed that said that they would defer their home purchase plans to over 1 year later, 70%. And then on the supply side, you see private developers, they haven't bought much land in 2022. And private developers, they account for 2/3 of the sector's sales. And that is really going to squeeze the launch pipeline going into 2023.
We're talking about SIFI Holdings here. The fact that they couldn't reach any kind of agreement with creditors, and now they're suspending these kind of payments, what does that tell you now?
Right, so the biggest questions that are raising to us is, for the last two surviving developers in the private space, that is Longfor and Country Garden, do they face the risk of mirroring any of the developments that SIFI is facing right now? And for SIFI, it could be headed for rescheduling or potentially restructuring, but the biggest question for SIFI and a lot of other distressed Chinese developers is that, their underlying revenue generating model is faltering. And, we see an L-shaped recovery in the sector, and we're really not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel of a turnaround.
And if, for our viewers maybe just joining us first time in 3 years, why is there such a big difference between the state-owned developers and the private developers right now?
Right, so in the eyes of the home buyers, state-owned developers, they see that they have the backing from the governments and the assurance of delivery. If I'm paying millions on a property now, I could be getting it in 2 to 3 years. And in the eyes of investors, state-owned developers are the only ones that can have consistent access to financing. And that refinancing risk is really easing the concerns on, their repayment capacity. Yeah.
The Longfor chairwoman leaving, it doesn't send a good signal, right? That these founders are not even trying to see this through, this crisis, and just sort of, in a way, jumping ship. Does that signal any sort of change to you if there's new leadership?
Right, it's a big surprise to the market. She has been serving for 17 years, and her departure comes at such a sensitive timing. But we don't think that it's going to really impact the operation of the company because the existing leadership team has been serving for many years. But I think in the eyes of the home buyers, what we are concerned about is how it could hurt home buyer confidence, because Madam Wu has been the face of the company. She represents the track record and the value of the company that differentiates it versus other private Chinese developers.